Ask young fans about Adrien today, and they'll know him as the drunk guy crashing out on live streams.
Stop disrespecting me,
But before the alcohol, he was boxing's next superstar, a 4-division world champion who made over $30 million. He stepped on money like it was nothing and even flushed some down the toilet. So where exactly did things go left? Let's break it down. The boy who couldn't be beaten. Long before the mugshots and the courtroom cameras, there was a little boy in Cincinnati whose boxing gloves were far too big for his tiny hands. That boy was named Adrien Jerome Broner, and he was born on July 28, 1989, in Cincinnati, Ohio. He grew up in a rough part of town called Fairmount, in a working family that never had much money, and he was one of 5 children raised by Dorothy Broner and Thomas Knight. He had a twin brother named Andre, and the two of them earned a reputation in the neighborhood for being wild, restless, and almost impossible to control. His father understood that all of that energy needed somewhere to go, so he did something most parents would never even think to try. He turned the family backyard into a boxing ring. Adrien has told this story himself, and the way he tells it, the gloves came before almost everything else in his young life.
My family, they've been putting the boxing gloves on me since I was about 4 years old.
The Broner house had one very clear rule, and the rule was simple. If the boys wanted to fight, they were not going to do it inside the house. His father moved the whole thing out into the open air, and a family ritual was born right there in the yard.
Ain't gonna be no more of this fighting in the house, so we came up with that fighting in the yard.
Adrien and his twin were so good, so early, that the other kids in the neighborhood wanted nothing to do with them. That left only one option, and it was the option that would end up shaping his entire style as a fighter.
They didn't want to box with us, so we'll always have to box older and bigger guys.
One day, his father walked the twins into a local gym run by a trainer named Mike Stafford, and he made a bold promise the moment he stepped through the door. He told the coach he had some boys who would whip every kid in the building. Adrien held his own against nearly everyone that day, with one exception. He lost to a boy named Raushi Warren, who would grow up to become a multiple-time Olympian. Stafford saw something special in the kid, and he became a father figure and trainer who would guide Broner for most of his career, all the way until Stafford passed away in 2023. For a boy growing up around gunfire and street life, the gym became the one place on earth where all of the noise finally stopped.
Even though I was in the streets heavy, I always found myself in the gym.
He has described the neighborhood as a place that was simply too dangerous to sit still in, and the gym as the door he could walk through to leave all of that danger behind.
It's too dangerous staying here. But once I get in that gym, everything go away.
Once he was inside those walls, the outside world simply disappeared for him, and boxing became something much bigger than a sport. It became a kind of escape.
It's like I don't hear nobody, I don't see nobody. I go to another world.
That escape turned into obsession, and that obsession turned into results. By the time Broner finished his amateur career, he had built a record that most fighters can only dream about. He won around 300 fights and lost only 19, which is an enormous amount of ring experience for such a young man. He was a 2-time national silver gloves champion in 2002 and 2003, and he earned a bronze medal at the 2005 National Junior Olympics. But the same streets the gym protected him from were always waiting right outside the door. When he was 18 years old, Broner was arrested on serious charges that included aggravated robbery and felonious assault. He could not afford to post bond, so he sat in jail for about 6 months and was eventually cleared of the charges. The damage, however, was already done. He missed his window to qualify for the Olympics, and his shot at a gold medal quietly slipped away. He has spoken about how the system treated him like a grown man before he ever got the chance to be one.
Because they bounded me over and tried me as an adult when I was 17.
Instead of chasing the Olympic dream any further, Broner made a decision. With his family and Mike Stafford standing behind him, he turned professional on May 31st, 2008, and knocked out Alante Davis in the very first round in his own hometown. Then he did it again, and then again. He followed his debut with 2 more first-round knockouts, and the boxing world quickly started to pay attention. The rise was fast and it was loud. He won a controversial decision over the former champion Daniel Ponce de Leon in March of 2011, then blew out Jason Litzau in the very first round on national television. In November of 2011, he knocked out Vicente Martin Rodriguez to win his first world title at around 22 years old. He called himself the Problem, and he began collecting titles in different weight classes, becoming one of the youngest fighters ever to do it. He was flashy, he was fearless, and he was never shy about telling anyone who would listen exactly how good he believed he was.
A lot of people think I'm arrogant. A lot of people think I'm cocky.
He always pushed back on that word, though. In his own mind, this was not arrogance at all. This was belief. And it was the same belief that had carried him out of the yard and into the bright lights.
I'm not. I'm very confident, and I believe in myself.
The comparisons to Floyd Mayweather were everywhere by now, and Broner welcomed every single one of them. He was young, He was undefeated, and he honestly believed the sky had no ceiling. What he did not know yet was that the ceiling was already on its way. And when it finally arrived, it would arrive in the shape of a rough Argentine who did not care one bit about the hype. The night everything cracked, on the 14th of December 2013, Adrien Broner walked into the ring as one of the most hyped fighters on the entire planet. He was the undefeated welterweight champion. He carried a record of 27 wins and 0 losses, and the betting odds had him as a heavy favorite at around 5-1. Standing across from him was Marcos Maidana, a tough pressure fighter from Argentina who hit hard and never stopped moving forward. Most people thought Maidana was dangerous but still beatable. Most people were wrong. From the opening bell, Maidana did not fight like a man who had read the script. He swarmed Broner with heavy shots to the body and the head, and then he did something nobody had ever done before. In the second round, Maidana dropped Broner with a left hook, and it was the very first knockdown of Broner's entire professional career. Broner survived, and he showed brief flashes of the speed and counterpunching that had made him famous. But Maidana simply kept the pressure on, and in the 8th round he put Broner down again, this time with a body shot, followed by a left hook to the head. Even a point taken away from Maidana for a headbutt could not change where this fight was clearly going. When the final bell rang, the judges made it official. Maidana won a clear unanimous decision with scores of 117-109, 116-109, and 115-110. Just like that, the undefeated record was gone. The showman who usually danced and celebrated had nothing left to say. He walked out of the ring quickly and quietly, without any of his usual antics. Years later, Broner would look back on this stretch of his life and admit something important. The real problem was never truly the other fighters. The real problem was the way he had been choosing to live.
I was a wrecking ball, man.
He came to understand that the habits outside the ring were quietly eating away at everything he was building inside of it. The lifestyle and the career were pulling in two completely different directions.
I was living a lifestyle that wasn't right for my career.
And the deeper truth underneath all of it was speed. He had risen so fast that he never gave himself the time to grow into the life he had won.
Because I was moving so fast. I was moving too fast.
The Maidana fight is the moment most fans point to as the beginning of the end for the prime version of Broner. He was never quite as fearless in a big fight again. He did rebuild for a while, and he even climbed back to the top when he won a world title at 140 pounds, which made him a champion in a 4th weight class. Before that comeback fight in his hometown, he stood in front of the world and made a promise that would end up sounding almost like a prophecy.
Nobody can beat me but me.
One thing that often gets forgotten about Adrien Broner's story is that the Maidana loss did not destroy his career overnight. In fact, for a while, it looked as though he had done exactly what great champions are supposed to do after suffering their first defeat. He returned to the ring later in 2014 and outpointed Carlos Molina over 12 rounds. A few months later, he survived a much tougher fight against Emmanuel Taylor, showing flashes of the speed and sharp counterpunching that had once made him one of boxing's brightest stars. Then came what should have been the start of a brand new chapter. In October 2015, Broner defeated Khabib Alakverdiev in Cincinnati to win the vacant WBA junior welterweight title. The victory made him a 4-division world champion before his 27th birthday, an achievement that very few fighters in boxing history have managed. For a brief moment, it felt as though the Maidana defeat had simply been a painful lesson, instead of the turning point everyone would later remember it as. The problem was that the victories never completely erased the questions that had started after Maidana. Even when Broner won, critics pointed out that he was throwing fewer punches, taking fewer risks, and relying more on his natural talent than sustained discipline. The confidence was still there, but something had changed beneath the surface. The swagger looked the same, yet the urgency that had carried him through his early career was beginning to disappear. Looking back now, that stretch feels almost bittersweet. Becoming a 4-division world champion should have marked the beginning of Adrien Broner's greatest years. But the good nights got rarer, and the bad nights got worse. Against the sharp technician Mikey Garcia, Broner looked hesitant and unwilling to let his hands go. Garcia outboxed him over 12 full rounds on the 29th of July 2017 and won a clear unanimous decision. Before that, Sean Porter had already handed him a competitive but clear loss in 2015, and then came the fight that turned his reputation into a punchline. On January 19, 2019, Broner shared the ring with a 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao. The older man dominated with volume, movement, and constant activity, while Broner stayed defensive and landed very little. Pacquiao won the unanimous decision by scores of 117-111 and 116-112 on the other two cards. What happened next is the part everyone remembers. Even though almost everyone watching saw a lopsided loss, Broner insisted that he had actually won the fight. This was not a one-time thing either. Broner had built a habit of looking straight at a loss and somehow seeing a win.
You actually won the fight.
Yeah, hell yeah, I believe I won the fight.
The talent was still buried in there somewhere, but the discipline was almost gone. He moved up and down in weight so often that his body paid the price, and he struggled badly to make the limits, even losing a title on the scale before a fight in 2012. The parties got bigger, the training camps got sloppier, and the trouble outside the ring stopped being an occasional rumor and started becoming a pattern. There were driving offenses, missed court dates, and a felony charge tied to an incident at a bowling alley in 2016 that was later dropped. As Broner's profile continued to grow, the comparisons to Floyd Mayweather only became louder. Floyd had already transformed himself into boxing's biggest attraction, and many fans believed Broner possessed the speed, reflexes, and confidence to follow the same path. The two spent time together outside the ring, and Broner openly admired Mayweather's success. Before long, people began noticing that he wasn't just borrowing Floyd's fighting style, he was borrowing the lifestyle too. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, luxury cars, stacks of cash on social media, and the constant reminders that he had made it all became part of Broner's public image. He even built his own brand around the phrase "about billions," presenting himself as someone destined to become the next larger-than-life superstar. As long as he kept winning, the image worked. Fans loved his confidence, broadcasters loved his personality, and promoters knew he could sell a fight. But there was one important difference between the two men. Mayweather's extravagant lifestyle was built on years of obsessive discipline inside the gym. Broner's lifestyle increasingly seemed to come first, while the discipline that had made him a champion slowly slipped away. The victories became less convincing, the headlines shifted away from boxing, and the image he had worked so hard to build became harder and harder to maintain. Once the biggest payday started drying up, the lifestyle that once looked effortless quickly became one more burden he could no longer afford. Broner didn't just create the phrase "about billions." He turned it into the image he wanted the world to associate with his name. Every interview, every appearance, and every post on social media reinforced the idea that he wasn't just another champion. He was living a lifestyle most fighters could only dream about. Luxury cars, custom jewelry, designer clothes, and stacks of cash became part of his public identity. As long as the biggest fights kept coming, the image worked, fans bought into it, promoters leaned into it, and Broner embraced it completely. The problem was that an image like that comes with expectations. Every major payday was followed by another display of wealth, another expensive purchase, another reminder that Adrien Broner was still living larger than life. Even as the biggest wins became less frequent and the purses began shrinking, the lifestyle hardly changed. Looking back, it's easier to understand how someone who earned tens of millions of dollars could still find himself running out of money. The image Broner had built during his rise demanded constant upkeep, and walking away from it may have been almost as difficult as accepting that his career was no longer at its peak. For a long time, none of it seemed to matter, because the money kept pouring in. He was buying watches for total strangers and flushing cash on camera, and he honestly believed it would go on forever, standing over nothing. To understand how far Adrien Broner fell, you first have to understand how high he was flying.
Let me show you what I do to these little motherfuckers right here. I don't keep these bills.
He stood over stacks of cash on those streams the same way he once stood over the men he knocked out in the ring, like a king who could never lose his throne.
Now I'm standing over money.
He has since admitted that the spending reached numbers that are honestly hard to even imagine. When he was asked how much he had burned on jewelry alone across his career, the figure was staggering.
About 9 million.
That was $9 million on jewelry by itself. And when the very next question asked what he had left to show for all of it, his answer was short, quiet, and brutal.
And I don't have a piece.
The spending was only half of the story, though the other half was the trouble, and the trouble kept getting more serious. On June 8, 2018, Broner was accused of assaulting a woman he did not know at a lounge in Cleveland, and the case alleged that he pinned her down and forcibly kissed her as she struggled. He pleaded guilty in April of 2019 to misdemeanor charges of assault and unlawful restraint, and he was given 2 years of probation. The criminal case was not the end of it. In December of 2019, a judge named Nancy Margaret Russo awarded the woman a judgment of around $783,000, a number that climbed past $830,000 once interest was added on top. The award included money for the woman's emotional harm, and a large sum meant purely as punishment. Then came one of the strangest chapters in the entire story. In November of 2020, the same judge threw Broner in jail for failing to hand over financial documents in the case. The timing was almost impossible to believe. He had posted a video on Instagram showing large stacks of cash, not long after telling the court he had only $13.65 to his name. Inside that courtroom, the questions came fast, and Broner did not have good answers for any of them.
Where's all the money coming from that you're flashing around on Instagram? Whose money is that?
His explanation was that the money on his own page was never really his money at all. It was help, he said, coming in from wealthy friends.
It's getting sent to me. I don't
By
have
who? Who's sending you money?
my friends.
The judge had heard more than enough by that point, and she told him plainly and calmly exactly where he was going next.
Because I don't understand what I'm going to jail for right now, and I answered the question.
You're going to jail for civil indirect contempt.
By 2021, the man who had once earned tens of millions of dollars filed for bankruptcy protection, and court filings reportedly showed as little as $13 in his bank account. The fortune was completely gone. He later spoke very plainly about just how broke he really became.
I'm broke as man.
He described a moment that no former millionaire ever expects to face, the kind of moment that strips a person all the way down to nothing.
When I woke up and I couldn't go buy nothing to eat.
When he was later asked whether streaming had saved him from being broke, his answer revealed just how close to the edge he had actually come.
No, it saved me from going back to jail.
That streaming world became his brand new career. In early 2026, Broner leaned all the way into content creation as a way to make money, and he teamed up with a popular streamer named Dean the Great for chaotic live streams full of parties and takeovers. At first, it truly looked like a lifeline. Then the drinking took over the screen. He has never hidden the fact that getting drunk is simply part of who he is now. For a while, the streams gave fans hope. They were messy and unpredictable, but they also put Broner back in front of millions of people. Instead of waiting years between fights, fans could suddenly watch him every week. Some believe this was the beginning of a second career, one that could help him rebuild financially while keeping his name relevant long after his boxing days were over. But the longer the camera stayed on, the harder it became to ignore what viewers were seeing. The confidence that once made him one of boxing's biggest attractions increasingly gave way to emotional outbursts, drunken arguments, and moments that left even longtime supporters uncomfortable. Clips spread across social media almost overnight, and the conversations beneath them no longer centered on whether Adrien Broner could become a world champion again. They centered on whether he was okay. That change may have been the saddest part of all. There was a time when fans tuned in because they wanted to watch one of the sport's most gifted talents perform under the brightest lights. Now many were tuning in simply to see what would happen next. The spectacle had replaced the sport. Every new viral clip pushed his boxing accomplishments a little further into the background, until an entire generation began knowing Adrien Broner less as a 4-division champion and more as the man going viral for the wrong reasons. The decline was not only happening on camera either. It was happening in the ring too. In his last real fight on June 7, 2024, Broner faced Blair Cobbs and looked slow, hesitant, and badly out of shape. Cobbs dropped him in the second round with a left hand that even knocked out one of his teeth, and Broner lost his mouthpiece more than once before dropping a clear decision. His professional record now sits at 35 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw, and he has been mostly inactive ever since. His behavior on those recent streams has left many longtime fans genuinely worried about his well-being rather than entertained by the show. So what really happened to Adrien Broner? It would be easy to blame the losses. It would be easy to point at Maidana or Garcia or Pacquiao or the endless years of parties. But the truth that runs quietly through every single chapter of this story is simpler and far sadder than any one opponent. The gym was the only place that ever made the noise stop for him. And the moment he stopped protecting that place, all of the noise came flooding straight back in. The streets he escaped as a boy, the money he could never manage to hold on to, the bottle he keeps returning to, and the fame that turned strangers into leeches all rushed into the empty space that boxing used to fill. Adrien Broner was never truly beaten by a better fighter. He was beaten by the life he built around the fighter. And the most haunting part is that he told us this himself, long before the rest of us were ready to understand it. He stood in front of the world and swore that nobody could beat him but himself. In the end, that turned out to be the one prediction he got completely right. Like this video? Click on the card showing on your screen for more.